here is the final part of Peter Pan by J.M. Barrie. Early the next morning, Peter and the Lost Boys were all up and about. They put on the pirate's clothes, the trousers cut off at the knee, and naturally Peter was ship's captain. Tootles was made boatswain, with Nibs and John as first and second mate. Peter's orders struck a very pirate-like note, and all hands cheered him heartily. "It's time to take Wendy home," Peter told his crew. "We sail for the Azores, and after that it will save time if we fly." Many boys were in favour of turning pirate, but Peter ordered that it should be an honest boat. Though the general feeling was that he did so to lull Wendy's suspicions. No one would dare to question Captain Pan. But we must not stay with the Jolly Roger. We must leave the children to their voyage and return to the sad home which Wendy, John and Michael Darling left so long ago. Back at home, Mr. Darling was asleep in the doghouse, his punishment for locking Nana out on that fateful night, and Mrs. Darling had fallen asleep in her chair in the nursery. Now we know that her children were rubbishy and had not thought of her often, but she couldn't help loving them still and often sat near the open window hoping they would come back. All of a sudden, Peter appeared outside the window. The thought of Wendy leaving was so sad that he had changed his mind. "Quick, Tink," he whispered, "close the window. Wendy will think that her mother has forgotten her, so she will come back with us." Together they pulled it shut, but when Peter peeped inside, he saw that there were 2 sad tears running down Mrs. Darling's cheeks. "She must be awfully fond of Wendy," thought Peter. "But I'm fond of Wendy too. We can't both have her." But Peter could not forget those 2 sad tears. "Oh, all right," he said at last and gulped. Then he opened the window. "Come on, Tink," he cried, and flew away. So when Wendy, John and Michael returned, they found the window open after all. Very quietly, they landed on the nursery floor and slipped into bed. When Mrs. Darling woke up, she thought that she was still dreaming. "Mother!" cried Wendy. "Mother!" cried Michael and John. Mrs. Darling opened her arms and the children ran to her. "George!" she cried to her husband. Mr. Darling ran into the nursery, closely followed by Nana, and there can never have been such a blissful scene of welcome. Downstairs, the Lost Boys had been told to count to 500 before following. Now they stood in a row, looking up hopefully at Mr. and Mrs. Darling. Of course, Mrs. Darling wanted to adopt them straight away. It took Mr. Darling a little longer to get used to the idea of being father to so many children, but when it was agreed at last, he went off dancing about the house with happiness, and they all danced after him. Wendy did see Peter again. He came to say goodbye before he and Tink flew home, and asked Wendy to come with him. Mrs. Darling said no, but when she saw how sad Peter looked, she agreed that Wendy could visit for 1 week every year. So each spring, if Peter remembered, he would fly back and take Wendy away for more adventures in Neverland.